The most common evidence for President Putin's desire to restore the Soviet Union is that Putin believes the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest tragedy of the 20th century, with no more context seemingly being required. This allegation is repeated by politicians, media and academics, and yet it is deeply flawed. In the original speech, Putin argued as follows: "We should acknowledge that the collapse of the Soviet Union was a major geopolitical disaster of the century. As for the Russian nation, it became a genuine drama. Tens of millions of our co-citizens and compatriots found themselves outside Russian territory. Moreover, the epidemic of disintegration infected Russia itself. Individual savings were depreciated and old ideals destroyed. Many institutions were disbanded or reformed carelessly. Terrorist intervention and the Kazakh capitulation that followed damaged the country's integrity. Oligarchic groups possessing absolute control over information channels served exclusively their own corporate interests. Mass poverty began to be seen as the norm, and all of this was happening against the backdrop of a dramatic economic downturn, unstable finances, and the paralysis of the social sphere." Later on, as Putin was asked to elaborate on his comments, he responded, "Anyone who doesn't regret the passing of the Soviet Union has no heart. Anyone who wants it restored has no brains." Putin's speech, a key evidence to support the narrative of a desire to restore the Soviet Union, is evidently not as it is represented to the manipulated Western audiences. When the context and facts do not fit with the narrative, the ideological fundamentalists do their bit for the good fight by ignoring reality. Ideological fundamentalism also supports the development of a new language, consisting of simplistic binary language of good versus evil, to give either legitimacy or deny legitimacy. Our interests are framed as the advancement of good values, while the illegitimate interests of our adversaries represent the opposite. In the competition for dominance during the Cold War, the US was the leader of the free world, while the Soviet opponent was an evil empire. After the Cold War, the US argued that its enemies were evildoers. Adversarial states were part of an axis of evil, while the US was a crusader for freedom. The US attempt to replace Russia as an energy provider to Europe was framed as countering the Russian energy weapon, and instead spread America's freedom gas and molecules of US freedom. The US and Russia pursued the same objective, but they are nonetheless not comparable, as one is good and the other is evil. George Orwell referred to it as newspeak, the creation of a new language that makes it impossible to express and even think anything in opposition. Gunboat diplomacy, as the intimation of other states, is now freedom of navigation. We do not pursue dominance and impose our dictates. We negotiate from a position of strength. We do not support torture, but we have